being a big fan of startups and Y Combinator, 2 years ago when I started this, I was like, oh man, every startup who wants to deal with big data is going to use our stuff. Turns out startups don't have money. So this is sort of a more classic developer-driven adoption, but in the enterprise. We make it easy for developers to get started, but everybody who's come to us and has wanted our product, like they tend to be VPs of engineering, CTOs, guys at serious enterprises, because they're the ones who sort of have the view of, I've got 20 or 30 different databases, I need to unify it all, I need it to stay fast, and I need to build an actual data layer for our company. So it's much more enterprise focused than like startup or small business.
Can you comment on how your database interfaces with existing applications?
Yes, we're a SQL database, so we support JDBC. And for web applications, we support JSON over REST. So just plug it in and go. Of course, when you transition between any kind of databases, there's always some bumps because every database has their sort of proprietary additions to SQL and whatnot. But we hope that by fundamentally supporting SQL, we'll make it very easy for folks to re-platform on top of us.
I think one of the things that interests me is your global index, but how do you keep that redundant, and how do you keep that in synchronization so that you can have all of that intelligence to query the nodes?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So at the heart, one of the things our system does is everything is tunable for different use cases. To keep the index, indexing is always a trade-off between disk space, latency, and throughput. So as your data, we are actually ACID compliant at the row level. So as your data is written to every row in HBase, it's simultaneously written to the index on whatever node it needs to live on. And then to keep that up to date in the event of crashes or massive floods of data, we have things in the background which continuously check on the index, make sure it's happy, repair it when necessary. And in the case of some use cases you raised, we actually have multi-data center replication and indexing. So you can run your data across the globe.
Can you talk a little bit about your sales and support strategy?
Yeah. So, enterprise sales, big money, big latency, kind of sucks. But there's always a place for it in every organization. One thing you may have seen that we're developing is, and our customers are doing this right now, you want to use our stuff, give us a call. Here's the website to the credit card. Just sign up for 10 nodes and get started. We found that it really lowers the barrier to entry to get people running when we can give them a freemium option. When we give them 5 or 10 nodes for free, and we make it really easy for them to pay with a credit card. It's how you get developers engaged. Now when it comes to the big sales, like when we talk with government and all that, you just sort of have to dig in and bring out the guy with the really nice teeth to sign the deals. And that's the enterprise life.
And to date, what is the largest commercial implementation that you have?
So we're in the beta POC stage now. One customer we're talking to will be putting 40 terabytes of data a month in it, which isn't that big for us, but we're just starting out, so we want to make sure everything's successful.
So in your internal testing, how far have you hit?
We have run it on 50 nodes, super beefy rack space nodes, which cost us a fortune. I'm trying to think, 4 terabytes per node, I guess that's 200 terabytes. Not a whole lot of data by our standards. And it certainly showed us where we need to improve. But because it's distributed, it's scale out. So in theory, of course, until some limit, you can keep adding boxes and it'll stay fast.
So what are the infrastructure requirements?
It's kind of cool because most databases require really expensive boxes. We assume that you're in a commodity network. So 10 gigabit Ethernet is great. Boxes with preferably 4 hybrid drives or more hybrid drives, each of which costs $100 to $200. Total cost per server around $3,000. We'd rather have 50 $3,000 servers than 3 $150,000 servers.
It seems like, the enterprise is saturated with databases. And I understand
Indeed.
This is real-time, high-performance stuff, but those traditional database players are talking that game too. So is your initial target market going to be more web-oriented efforts or Are there truly, big data opportunities in the enterprise that are obvious?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and one we're always sort of refining our answer on. Seems that big data adoption in the enterprise, the customers who come to us have tried everything. They said, we gave a couple $1 million to Oracle, then we switched to MySQL, we federated it, that didn't scale. We have Lucene over here, we don't even know why we did that. We tried some NoSQL solutions. We're really at the end of our wits. And so the guys who come to us are the ones, they usually already use Hadoop, and they've said, we need something that's real time and big. And the fact that we're built on HBase probably gives us a leg up because they already associate that with scalability. Maybe a second part to your question is what happens when the big boys come here? And it'll perhaps happen one day, but everything we've done is built to be distributed. And guys like Oracle and Microsoft, they have some sort of NoSQL offerings, but they're very, very deeply tied to their classic relational model. And developing stuff like a distributed index, single path query engine, our hybrid document and row column-based store, it's sort of a fundamental shift in thinking, and I just don't see them doing that anytime soon.
Thoughts from the audience? Questions out there?
Questions always appreciated. Hey.
So anytime I hear someone say database, real-time, big data, then I also think consistency and locking.
Exactly.
So how do you handle that problem sort of globally if you're distributed?
Great question. So we focus very highly on consistency and partition tolerance in that great CAP paper that everybody talks about. When it comes to locks, we do have a universal transaction, but honestly, distributed transactions and distributed locks are horrific for performance. So we don't recommend you using this for that. We're not an OLTP database. You wouldn't want to run your bank account off of us, nor would you want to run like your ERP on top of us. We're a little bit more towards the applications and analytics side of things.
Question here. Well, if you could just wait for the mic so we can capture your question in the stream. Thank you.
You mentioned that big companies come to you. How do they find you today?
Usually, that's a good question. A lot of them find us just through word of mouth, Twitter, events like this,
Bradford
talks I give.
waves one of those signs.
Pretty
on
much,
the
yeah,
street.
like I'm the guy with the sandwich sign. Perhaps a deeper question you ask is, how do we cross the chasm from being the cool startup with the neat database technology into a repeatable enterprise-grade business? And I think with the combination of actually selling to developers and having just strong enterprise sales, getting the brand out there, contributing to open source, that's how you build a database company these days.
Great. Bradford, thank you.